Hello, and welcome to the Designing with Love podcast. I am your host, Jackie Pellegrin, where my goal is to bring you information, tips, and tricks as an instructional designer. Hello, instructional designers and educators. Welcome to episode 60 of the Designing with Love podcast. I'm thrilled to have Dr. Albert Bramante, a veteran talent agent, coach, and college professor with me today. Welcome, Albert.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Yes, I'm happy to have you here as well. Thank you. So to start, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and share what led you to focus on education and psychology?
Well, I've always been interested in knowledge and interested in learning. I had a strong love for learning. I was always a book reader. And I think teaching is and education is kind of in my blood and DNA because my mom was a teacher, an elementary school teacher, first grade for 30 years. And my father and oldest brother, while they weren't in formal education, they were coaches, particularly athletic coaches. So I think the combination of coaching and teaching kind of just was in my DNA. And I always would daydream, even when I was in like middle school or high school, that I'd be in front of the classroom and teaching. And I couldn't wait to receive my master's degree because I was going to finally be able to teach at the college level. I didn't, incidentally enough, I had really no interest in K through 12 education. I mean, I don't want to brag, but having a mom in the system, I probably could have gotten a job over a traditional candidate very easily. I didn't want to. That was not my. I don't think I would have had the patience or the ability to work with children and teens, but I wanted to teach. After I received my master's degree, I put my resume into community college, in my neighborhood. They were looking for adjuncts, in all different disciplines. It wasn't specific. So I put in for psychology. I didn't hear anything for like 2 years. And it was after Labor Day weekend. I was looking for a job because I was working in the social service sector for a couple of years, and I was in a grant funded position after 9/11. And the grant ended, so did my position. So I was looking for a job, and I remember getting a phone call the day after Labor Day in 2003. And they had asked me, if I'm available, to come and have a conversation. I didn't know what, I was like, sure, I was like, I wasn't doing anything. So I went down the same day. It was like an hour later, I was there. They asked me, what my availability was. I said, I'm fairly available. They said, we called you in here because two adjunct faculty members backed out on us the last minute. The day before classes begin, we need someone to fill in. Okay.
Wow.
Lo and behold, said I'm available. They didn't even ask me what my background was. They didn't ask me, anything. They just said, great. Next thing you know, I see the secretary, printing stuff off the computer, not knowing anything. She goes, oh, here's your class list. You start tomorrow.
Oh my gosh, Albert. Wow.
Now, I was just like walking out of in the ride home, asking myself, what just happened? Because now I had 4 classes.
Not just
okay?
one, but 4. Wow.
Not just one, but 4. 3, there were 3 sections of one class, and then 1 section of another class. There were 3 sections of child psych and 1 section of psych 101, which is the 102 where you teach at, or work at, I should say. So 102. So it was 101. Well, okay, what do I do? Now, I had no formal training in education. So what I did, I said, okay, let me channel the teachers I liked. I made a list of all the teachers I liked, and I said, okay, what are the qualities? What do they do? Why did I like them? And then I made another list of teachers that I wasn't too crazy about. What were they doing? So I don't do that. So I didn't sleep that night. I mean, I was a nervous wreck. I walk into the college, I walk into class, and I just started ad-libbing like crazy, improv. So improvisation was really valuable here.
Yeah, I'm sure.
because I couldn't tell the students, hi, my name is Mr. Bramante. I have no idea what I'm doing. Um, but here we go, because that was the truth. I have no idea what I'm doing. Um, and for the whole semester, it was pretty much I have no idea what I'm doing. But in a sense, I did because it was like more my intuition. And when I've always wanted to be at that moment. I think that was like the one thing that didn't like like cause me to totally freak out because I said, I always waited my life to get here, and here I am. I'm teaching. I get to do what I love, and I think that kind of propelled me forward. And then I realized how much I like it and how much I was just enjoying myself up there, talking and having conversations and with the students and just immensely enjoying it. And at the end, towards as the semesters are wrapping up, a lot of students were coming up and saying, "This is my favorite class. Keep it up. You're doing great. I love this class." And I'm like, keeping it calm and cool in front of them, but of course I wanted to jump up and down and swing from the chandeliers
Right.
because I was so happy. I
Yeah.
was so happy,
Yeah.
and surprised but happy. And then once, at the end, they're like, because at that time I was a lot younger. So, they had said to me, like, "You're really young. You must have been teaching for a while." And I went, "Yeah." And I lied. I was like, "No, this is my first semester." Really?
Yeah.
Uh, so that was fall of 2003, and I've been doing it ever since. So it's now 2025. So what I like about it is I get to share a passion of mine, and I get to share knowledge. I get to have conversations, and I learn from my students. And I think one thing that really helps with learning a subject is being able to teach it. Because I can tell you, I learned probably just as much about psychology from teaching it than I did during my formal education.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. Yeah, so important. Yeah.
It's so important to be able to teach, because so I mean that's the one thing I would say that really helped me. I think even appreciate it even more is how much I'm learning each time I'm teaching. I'm like, this is amazing how much I know about my field, and I'm still learning and I'm still evolving. So the important thing I think for any educator is to have a growth mindset and to keep learning.
Hello, I have some exciting news to share with all of my listeners. There is a feature called fan mail. What this allows you to do is send me a text message anytime during the episode. There's a link located at the top of the description in each episode, and it says send Jackie a text message. So when you click on that link, you'll be able to send me a message letting me know what you thought about the episode and if you have any ideas for future episode content as well. I look forward to seeing your text messages. Thank you. Absolutely. Yeah, that's so important. Yeah, I love that because you don't want to become stagnant, right? And yeah, I noticed that when I started teaching almost 4 years ago in the field that I'm in instructional design, it really opened up my eyes to different things and it helped me deepen my knowledge and my skills. And I feel like I'm better at my full-time job as an instructional designer because I teach and I'm able to empathize, I think, a little bit more than I used to, and I understand the faculty, what their issues are, because I work with subject matter experts every day that are faculty teaching, not in the same discipline, but a different discipline. But yeah, it makes such a
Yeah,
huge difference when you can do. And I like what you said too about how you learn from your students and they learn from you. It's a two-way street. And
absolutely.
I love that because I don't want to be the one, and we both don't. We don't want to be the one teaching at them. We want to be teaching with
Right.
them.
With them. I think we can even add a third element, which I found. I mean, not only I'm learning from them, but they're learning from each other. So it's like
Yes.
trifecta. I'm obviously they're learning from me, but I'm learning from them and they're learning from each other. So, and that was a big thing. Like for me, on all my classes, I really emphasized participation and class participation. So that is so important, for me is to um, really bring that in there, the importance of participation, because again, we're learning from each other. We're not, and I want to hear what they have to say. And I think, I've always been a proponent of, we're adults, and if I want my, and every faculty member, I'm sure wants their students to respect them. But if you want them to respect you as a teacher, you as a teacher need to and should respect the student.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So important.
That is so important. And I don't want to like turn this into a trash talk, but I've seen both as a student and even as a faculty member, other colleagues of mine that were like, "What are you doing?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And a lot of times they would have even with students that were feel comfortable enough that would come to me like crying. The speaker said this to me, the professor said that to me.
Mm.
And I know who they're talking about. And of course, I'm not going to say trash the teacher in front of the students, but in my head, I'm like, I believe you, the student that was there. I believe that happened. It's sad, but I believe that happened. So I think the important thing, again, to be an effective educator is we also need and should demonstrate respect and empathy and compassion for our students. Now, having said that, also holding them to academic standards, because there's a fine line between showing compassion and empathy, but and at the same time being a pushover. Which I have to be honest, again, to be self-reflective and critical, I probably was in my first, 4 or 5 years of teaching, a bit of a pushover, you know, or easygoing, laid back, a little too much.
That's how I was at first. Yeah,
And
that's the same way.
And then when I had heard, and what really woke me up to it was hearing other students, say that, about me that, oh, this professor allows students to take advantage of them.
Mm.
And I had a couple of students even come to me, even anonymously send me emails, where I wouldn't know. They was like, you need to be tougher with some of your students in the class. And I was like, okay. So I think that, there's a fine line between, empathy and respect and compassion, but also being, firm with standards. And the past 9 years have been I've been like that. Where I will be empathy if a student is going through a tough time. The one thing I will not be empathy, and I tell this at first day of class, if you stop coming to class and then all of a sudden give me a sob story at the absolute last day of the semester about why you were absent, and I should still pass you.
Right. Yeah.
I'm like, do not even, and I tell students, I'm like, you might as well not. And I have found myself in the past 9 years very rarely changing grades, unless I made a slight clerical error that was me once or twice in the hundreds of students I've had in the past 9 years. Other than that, I will not change, or anything.
Right. Because you're wanting to set them up. We want to set our students up for success so that they can go on to a career. There's a reason they're going to school. It's not just you hope in the undergraduate school it's not just a party, but they're actually wanting to get a career and things like that.
And it's preparing them for the real world.
Yeah.
And that's the real thing. Because if I'm late on my rent or on my landlord, and I come and say, well, I'm having these family problems. Please grant me an extension, or please, wipe up the rent. That I'm going to get laughed at. Or the same thing if I don't pay my bills. If I come to the electric company and say, hardship, they're going to be like, well, tough luck.
Mm-hmm.
Or the same thing working a job. If I'm in a real job, if I'm not pulling my weight, I'm going to be let go.
Right. Absolutely.
So and that's why I think, part of it, and I kind of even say, like, look, I am showing empathy and compassion by doing that because I'm, preparing you for the real world. Now, if you do work in your professional and you do have some genuine hardship, I will work with you.
Yeah, I do the same thing too. And yeah,
I will
yeah.
work with you if you have you reach out to me privately while it's happening
Mm-hmm.
about what you're doing. I will work with you. Like, I had some students during the pandemic who either their moms themselves, had COVID and were in the hospital. Obviously, they're not, their priority is not going to be logging into the Zoom class or logging into the synchronous class and doing the work. But they reached out to me while it was happening, and I worked with them. I was like, okay, we'll come up with an alternative because it's all about professionalism. And I think, it's a saying, if you show me respect, I'll show you respect, and that's the way it should be with teachers.
Yeah, that's so true. Definitely. Yeah. So, what's one piece of advice you would give to someone who feels overwhelmed by self doubt in a creative field like education or even instructional design, like what I do and what some of my listeners are going into?
Well, the main thing is to always take stock of the accomplishments that you've already done. So you have the training. Now maybe you might not have training in formal education, like I didn't have, but I knew what I was doing, and I had a trust in myself. So the main thing is, like, you can do this, and really, I would probably sit down with someone and say, why did you become a teacher? Like, let's talk about that. Most likely, it's because they want to share their knowledge or to inspire. Okay. So let's look each day that you go into that classroom or that you design that curriculum, you're there to inspire your students. One of the things that, and I'm going to use a little bit of research here, they've done studies that demonstrated even before the school or the school year or semester began, the teacher's attitude and mindset made a whole world of a difference. So if I walk in, like, let's say at the beginning of the semester, I'm going to have so many great students and I'm going to have a great time. There's a high likelihood that that's going to happen. On the other hand, if I say these darn students and I want and I start cursing them out, they're so lazy, I'm going to have such a rough time, that'll happen too. So the main thing I would say is, like, try to get energized. So the big thing about me with any type of work is taking breaks. A lot of time that's so important. That's why they call it a summer vacation for a reason, or a summer break, or spring break for a reason. It's called a break. So what I would encourage the educators to do is, like, spend your your summers or even your break not not thinking about it and not focusing so much or stressing out over the upcoming year or how you're going to approach it. Take time off because sometimes a lot of times burnout is very easy in this profession.
Yes.
Unfortunately,
Right.
it's very easy to get burned out, and it's harder sometimes to stay inspired. So the important thing is to set boundaries in life. Even set a schedule before the school year begins or the academic term begins. Like, obviously what your teaching schedule is, or what your design schedule is, or what your work schedule is. Obviously, that's going to take priority, whatever schedule is. But then schedule time in your week for alone time, self care, family time. If you have kids, children, or a family, spend time for family time, and then alone time, and try to aim to do at least one thing a week that's great that you enjoy.
I love that. Yeah. That reminds me of that self-care wheel, right? Where there's each part of the self-care wheel that, we should practice. And, yeah. So I love that. It reminds me of that because
Yes.
I've been to counseling before, during tough times. And so, yeah, I actually have a copy of the wheel, and I'll refer to it, and I'll think of my counselor that helped me through that time. And so, yeah. And I'm sure that that's used in psychology too, with that.
Yeah, I mean, self-care is vital
Mm-hmm.
in this type of work, because that's the biggest factor of why we burn out, because there is a lack of self-care. We're so focusing on, am I helping my students? Am I helping other people, that we're not helping ourselves?
Right. Right. That's true. Yeah, it can happen in the helping profession quite a bit. And so, yeah, that self-care is so
Hmm.
important. Absolutely. Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, and that segues into a good part about self-esteem. So you introduced techniques for raising self-esteem in your book. Could you share a couple of these techniques and maybe a
Yeah.
success story of someone who's applied?
Well, the main thing is to, first thing is to connect back to the reason, the why, and kind of look at every behavior as a positive intention. Remain, really focused on the main reason why you want to become an educator or teacher, and having a genuine care for others. Now, another thing that's important is the company you keep. So, really hang out with people that are going, or associate yourself with people that are positive minded, people that are all about improving themselves, and not about negativity. Unfortunately, sometimes can happen when you're in school, or whether in secondary school, elementary school, or high school, or even college. Sometimes you might find that certain faculty circles might vent a lot, or kind of moan and complain. And I would say just those are situations, as much as possible, remove yourself from,
It's a good idea. Yeah, absolutely.
because you can get easily sucked into that,
Right.
and that can easily rub off on you and suck you in.
Yeah, and then it's hard to break away from that, right? Once you once you get sucked into that. Yeah, that's so
Hmm.
true. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great benefit and technique that we can do as educators. And I think even in the creative area of like instructional design, curriculum development, it's that happens too in the job that we do as curriculum developers, instructional designers, where I work. It's
Hmm.
we're constantly we do have a little bit of downtime in between the semesters, but uh, during the off semesters, right? During fall, because we have fall and spring, but during those off
Hmm.
times, we have to work on their curriculum because we have to get it ready for the fall or
Right.
for the spring. So it's,
Hmm.
we work on a quarter system, kind of like what you said with, where you've been to
With Walden,
school. Yeah, with
yes.
Walden.
Hmm.
So we work on a quarter system. So every 3 months, we have a set of courses that we work on. We either new development or we revise it. But it's it's so important. So our department does a good job of that self-care and
Hmm.
connection and collaboration with each other, because it's so important. And especially when you feel like you're siloed and isolated working from home, that can be so easy.
Yes. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
and that's a big thing too, that I was going to say too, is connection.
Mm-hmm.
Connection is so important, especially when raising self-esteem. Being connected to something is so important, because again, we can get lonely, and we found this especially during the pandemic, during 2020. A big thing that was really effective was our mental health, and our mental health was a lot of times affected because of the loneliness that we were experiencing. And that's why we saw, unfortunately, a lot of substance abuse and alcoholism on the rise, because again, the isolation and connection is important. So one thing I would say is try to definitely find organizations, even online. Try to find support groups or teachers, and other instructional designers, because they're out there. And if they're not out there, start one. Just once a week, check in. Because it can be lonely, but it doesn't have to be.
Right. Yeah. You just have to make the effort, right? And reach out.
Of
Yeah,
course.
absolutely. Yeah, I love that. That's great. So we know technology is just it's huge right now. So what do you see as some of the benefits and drawbacks of integrating different types of technology, including AI, into the curriculum? Because we know AI it's not going
Yeah.
anywhere.
No,
It's staying.
AI is here to stay. And it is developing at a lightning speed, which again is both good and bad. A bit of a concern. I don't want to say bad, but a concern.
Mm-hmm.
The good thing is I'm really liking what I see with the medical breakthroughs and all that, and some of the just the automation stuff. So maybe it could help with educators with like lesson planning and filing and all that, and just make be more focused on the teaching. So you can be more focused on the teaching and rather than so being bogged down with paperwork. And it'll also give you amount of research that you can get, the amount of answers you can get to common issues. Now, the drawbacks are, especially if you're dealing with chatbots, which are what we call large language models, like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Perplexity. They're all large language models, and they have some great capabilities, but they also have a tendency to hallucinate. What do we mean by hallucinate? Is not giving you entirely accurate information.
Right.
So this is why when we're using it, and I definitely think it's good to use these things, but to do it, you know, with a healthy sense of skepticism and not rely on them 100%. So, if you're an educator, I wouldn't have AI do your entire lesson plan. Now, what you could do is say, here's what I'm doing, here's my lesson plan, here's what I want to do. Help me come up with some brainstorming ideas of how to do it differently. What can I add? And then take it from there. But I would not, design the lesson plan and cut and paste it and then, submit it. Because one, it doesn't, AI is, again, a language model like ChatGPT and Claude. They don't have creativity. They don't have the intuition. They don't have the experience. So, um, the other day, I'm just give you a thing. I was like, I wanted to create, like an intro class. I was just wanting to see what it can do. So it gave me an intro lecture, and it was telling me what to say, which had some good information. But then it was telling me, use these different hand gestures to mention rapport. And I'm like, and I just was reading I looked like I was pantomiming. I'm like, my students wouldn't feel they'd be wondering if I'm okay.
Yeah,
If I
exactly.
did that.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to take it with a grain of salt. It's great, again, give you ideas, creativity, brainstorm, amplify what you're doing, but it should never replace what you're doing. Now, another danger comes in, especially for the teachers and instructors, is the students, they're going to be using it. There's no way around that. That we could lecture all day long and maybe force it in a classroom setting. If you're actually in a physical classroom setting, maybe turning the Wi-Fi off so they can't use it. That's the only way you're going to get around with them not using it.
Right.
Now, what I would do, I'd look for if the language is robotic, repetitive, and if it sounds like and I don't like, I know this may sound discriminatory, but if it sounds like it's written in like slightly above the student's intellect, I would start to question.
I would too. Yeah, absolutely.
Because I remember, I do a lot of thought papers, and where I have students reflect on things, and I could automatically tell when something was ChatGPT.
Yeah.
I really, this reading was such an eye opening. I have such a fond appreciation. I'm like, yeah.
Mm.
This sounds like Gemini. This sounds like ChatGPT. This sounds like, Claude. Now, we can't, the thing about what makes it challenging with AI is in the past, we could tell we could go right to the source, when students would plagiarize.
Yeah, that's so true.
Now we can't because you and I could do the same prompt in something and write the prompt the exact same way, but you and I are going to get different answers because it just depends upon how the way the model works at the moment. We're going to get a completely original response, technically original because it's not, but it still is plagiarism. It's hard to prove.
Right.
The one thing you can do is ask students to explain something more, to you, and do it verbally. Like, oh, I saw you did this, said this and this. Tell me, why what, I'm just curious what made you choose it, statement. It's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if they really wrote the material, they'll be able to answer. They're like, oh, because of, okay, great. Then you can move on. If they can, then you would have to. Then that would be a thing to question about. Okay, this is about academic honesty. But yet, there's no way you can stop them from doing that.
Right. There's no plagiarism checker for AI. Yeah.
And even so, because even when we had now, I mean, it's still there now, but when I was first teaching and even when I was in grad school, we had services like Turnitin.com.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Now, it was good, but it really it didn't, it would tell us, okay, all it would tell you is how original this paper is.
Right.
It very would rarely tell me that, because if I use, let's say, a same sentence that was in some papers from, another city, that's going to flag it if it was that paper that was also in. That doesn't mean I plagiarized. So it's a little bit, you have to use discernment. Now, sometimes what I found humorous over the years is some students were lazy cheaters. What I mean by lazy cheaters, I remember one time I used Turnitin.com and it brought me right to the article that they used. But what I laughed about it was that they didn't just use the article like okay, they copy and pasted the entire article.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And one incident, which is really comical, was they cut and paste the article, but didn't, I guess, change the formatting. So I got the hyperlinks. So when I clicked on the hyperlink, I got right up to the article. So I pulled the student aside on both of these instances, and I had the article in my hand, and I said, I don't think you're, Jackie Smith, PhD, are you? And they would turn all these different colors. I didn't fail them. I said, look, I'm going to ask you to do it again. I'm going to definitely take a penalty. You're going to get a penalty.
Right.
Because technically, this is why I think the respect. And I mean, now maybe you could argue. I know it was in my right. I could have failed them and reported them to the administration. Yeah, I did. But I did ask, or I think sometimes I might have just given like them a 0 for the assignment, which was almost, a third of their grade. So obviously their grade was going to go significantly down.
Right. Exactly.
But the truth is that I would just kind of talk, and I openly talk about ChatGPT. I'm like I know it's a tool. I know, and I'll even say, even if you want to just use it for this, go ahead. Because there's no doubt in hiding. Because even when I was teaching brick and mortar, a lot of faculty members were so upset with students texting in a classroom. Now, yes, it is a little rude. I'm not going to lie. To have a student texting in a classroom, I'm like, cell phones are second nature. So I started having them, do research. I'd be like, okay, by the way, you may want to look this up on your phone. Pull out your phone and look this up while I'm talking. So my philosophy is like, rather than looking at this as an enemy, how can we use this as a collaborative tool?
Right. Right.
Because when you make something forbidden, you make it more attractive. So if I start walking with like, you better not use every day, you better not use ChatGPT, what are students going to do? They're going to naturally start using it more and more.
Right. Instead of policing it, let's make it a collaborative tool. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, let's make it a collaborative tool. And let me know what you think. Like this semester, I'm teaching a class in theories of personality. So I'm going to actually have, we learn different theories like Freud, Jung, Skinner. And there's actually GPTs in ChatGPT that are these figures. So part of the assignment, part of an credit assignment, is going to be, I want you to go on ChatGPT and have a conversation with Freud about what we've been covering in class.
Yeah.
With Freud GPT.
I love that.
And let me know what you think, and then write a reflection on that, on what came up, show me the chat and what you, did. And it's like I said, it's not going. And as a matter of fact, most college, at least the college I'm at, is really aiming for how do we implement this again as an ally.
Right.
But of course, we do have to put guardrails on it. There's no doubt.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're doing that too at GCU. We use that stoplight method where we're trying to say red is no, you should not use it for this assignment, like quizzes, things like that, right? And then the yellow is yes, but only in certain aspects. And then green is like, yes, you use it, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's because I think universities don't use it and they shy, like you said, they ban it, then students are going to find a way to use it.
Well, they're going to find a way, either on their phone or when they're not looking, because especially if it's an online quiz and you're not policing them in the moment, in the face-to-face moment, who's to say they're not going to use chat GPT or look up the answers elsewhere?
Right, exactly. And then they end up online. Or we've seen our quizzes end up online.
I remember a couple of times that I had to change mine up. When we used to have Blackboard, now we have Brightspace, but we used to have Blackboard as a learning management system. And I used to put it was the quizzes that would tell me how long it would take. The student, how many minutes the students take to take the quiz. Now, when I first started using Blackboard, I used to have 10-question quiz. Like 10 questions, and I gave them like an hour and a half time limit. When I started seeing the students that were answering 10 questions in 90 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, I couldn't even answer that on my own in 2 minutes. And I wrote the quiz, sometimes I couldn't even answer that in that amount of time. So I knew something was up. So the way I came around it is what I now do is I put like an entire bank of questions up. And, let's say if I want to have a 20, 15 question quiz from each chapter or to exam, if it's a 4-chapter exam, I might have like 12 questions per chapter, like to make up 50. But I'll have a bank of 60 questions per chapter. And it randomly generates 12 questions from that bank.
That's a great idea.
And I scrambled the answers choices. So like, it's like, it may be, maybe the same question, the answer may be B, but in another version, it's that choice moves to C. So it scrambles the choices up.
Yeah.
I still think they're going to find a way. There's no way around it, but I prevented a lot of that from happening.
At least you're kind of taking some techniques and trying to at least reduce, right, the amount of cheating. Yeah, as much as you can. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah. I like too how you mentioned that example where, you ask them to have that conversation and then they have to give you that out what the chat was. They have to produce that. So they have to show the work, basically.
Yeah. And not because it would be like, well, I had a chat with Freud. It was a great discussion in the end. But did you really?
Right.
And sometimes I would, because what I used to do, and I still implement a lot of podcasts. Incidentally, I love podcasts. So one of the things I still do is I have students listen to podcasts. But I learned to start saying, okay, I need to see some direct quotes from the podcast. Because I used to say, summarize the podcast and say a reaction. And I could tell they were just looking at the iTunes or Spotify thing of the podcast and just putting it in their own words.
Oh, like looking at the transcript?
Yeah. Not even a transcript, or even just his show notes or something.
Oh, right.
There's a lot of hosts, of course, but detailed show notes in there. And right then I'm like, no, do the right thing there.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me of Cliff Notes when we were in school and we used to, remember those yellow books with the Cliff Notes?
Well, it's the same thing because I'm not gonna lie. I use that a lot.
Yeah.
When I was learning Shakespeare. I mean, and I'm not also, I'll probably be really honest here. I mean, I graduated a long time ago before ChatGPT and AI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if I wouldn't, I mean, of course now I would say I would never, no, can't. I can't really say that. I can't really say that. So if I can't say it, how can I stop my students from doing it? How can we stop our students? We can't.
Right.
But what we can do is teach ethical usage.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's like the same thing with like teaching a parent, parents teaching their kids about drugs. Do we shy away from it, or do we actually have honest communication about drugs and alcohol?
Right.
Because what we found is, if you have this honest communication with your kid, with kids about drugs and alcohol, they're less likely to use it.
Right.
Same thing goes. I think we have honest discussions about cheating and transparent discussion.
Yeah. And what those boundaries are. Yeah. And I think I think students appreciate that, right? When you're upfront, honest with them and transparent, and just say, here's what it is. And, and I'm going to be here to help guide you along the way. So come to me, and that's great. You have that open, honest communication with your students too. So yeah. That open door policy is so important. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, of course, 100%. It's really important to have that open door policy, because it's like shows like, look, okay, I know this is going on. Well, let's talk about it. And I've had a lot of students, believe it or not, that surprised me when we have conversation about AI when I brought up, especially in the ethics side of things. Because in my psychology class, we would talk about like people turning to chatbots for therapy, and what's the ethics behind that.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah.
And then we talk about like social dynamics, how a lot of people are alarmingly turning to AI for companionship.
Right.
Now that's my concern. Both of those cases are highly alarming. Now, like personally, like I said, I do utilize AI daily for like content research and iteration. But I think it's heavily concerned when we start turning it for therapy or for companionship. Because even Sam Altman, the founder of ChatGPT, said this is not what we should be using large language models for.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. It kind of goes beyond the scope of what it was intended for. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So true. Yeah. That's great advice. I love that, Albert. So as we wrap up, what are your top tips or advice for listeners who are looking to transition? I'm going to say education or instructional design, because we've talked about both, or just starting out in the field.
Well, the one thing is get connected to people that are doing this work. Network. Don't be afraid to ask questions. There's plenty of tools to network, whether in person, online. Always always be learning. Always learn new things, try new things out, and just stay connected to people. And remember, be gentle on yourself, and self-care is extremely important. Do at least one thing a week that's for you only and for your benefit only. And it's okay to be selfish. I'm giving you that permission to do something at least once a week that's for you.
Right. Yeah, that's great. I love that. I have a coworker that has her doctorate in psychology too, and she did a professional development that says self-care is not selfish. Yeah.
Not at all. Not at all. Because if you think about it, how are you going to be effective in working with other people and to educate and inspiring others if you're not taking care of yourself? I mean, it goes like if you ever go on an airplane, when they tell you, put your oxygen mask on first before you go on to help a child, or your family member. So that's the important thing, is put your mask on first, meaning look out for yourself first.
Yeah, so important. Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. Is there anything else you wanted to mention before we close out today?
No, I would just say, you have all the resources within. Let's all vow together to make this the 2025-26 academic school year a smashing success. We can all do it. I'm claiming it will be, and it will be. And if I can do it, we can all do it.
Right. Yeah, we're in this together. I love that.
Yes.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Albert, for sharing your insights today. I know your experiences, tips, and expertise are sure to inspire my listeners. So I greatly appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Anytime. I'm looking forward to having you back sometime soon.
I'd love to come back. And I'd love to hear from all the success stories from your listeners who made this year a great one.
Great. I love that. Wonderful. Thanks again, Albert. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you for taking some time to listen to this podcast episode today. Your support means the world to me. If you'd like to help keep the podcast going, you can share it with a friend or colleague, leave a heartfelt review, or offer a monetary contribution. Every act of support, big or small, makes a difference, and I'm truly thankful for you.